Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kieran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there. Maybe that's your next rig. You need a synth rig so you can actually trigger some, like... I'm joking, by the way. I could tell the way you're wincing. Yeah. For our listeners, obviously you can't see us, but Kieran looks like he's just smelt a really bad fart all of a sudden. I mean, maybe he has, to be actually... Greetings, welcome back to the Guitar Smarts podcast. Remember, if you're an everyday gigging guitarist, this is the podcast for you, and maybe your friends too, so please tell them about us. This week, we wrap up our look at the details of setting up your guitar's action, with a look at how to measure and adjust your guitar nut. Hopefully, after this episode and the previous two, you should feel way more confident getting the best out of your guitar's action and making adjustments you need to transform your guitar. I know this has really helped me, and I've already transformed a couple of my guitars following these steps, so you should do the same. Before that, we've got our usual chit-chat and catch-up, so stay tuned. Housekeeping. Remember to like and subscribe to this podcast on your preferred podcast app. This way, you won't miss the next show. Use the LinkTree in the description of this show to get to our Buy Me a Coffee page, links to some of our Spotify playlists, social media pages, especially the Guitar Geek Hangout page on Facebook, where you can interact with Kieran and myself and many other guitar nerds just like us. If you really want to support us, use the links to leave us a rating or a review. This is the best way to support us and help us grow. More importantly, it costs you nothing at all, but just a little bit of your time. Anyway, have a great couple of weeks. Remember, if you've got any comments or requests for the show, you can reach out to us directly on our social media pages. That's about enough from me. Let's get to it. How you doing, mate? You well?
Good. Really good. Yeah, it's cold here in the UK, but sunny. So can't complain. It's not raining. It's a beautiful day out there today.
It's like, isn't it? It's gorgeous, isn't it?
It's got that crisp kind of wintry frost on the ground, but lashings of sunlight streaming through the window. Got a nice warm cup of tea in hand, which I can see you have as well.
Absolutely. I was walking around the garden the other day as well, and I noticed that some of there's some signs of like some bluebells coming up, and some of the little trees are starting to bud as well, and things like that.
Yeah, and then you quickly retreated inside and plugged in the Les Paul into a Marshall and decided that was more important than looking at the first daffodils appearing.
Yeah, I know, but come on, spring, bring a little bit of warmth. Hurry up, let's have an early one this year, please.
It's been cold. It's been cold. It's been cold. How you been though, guitar-wise? What you been doing this week? You've been playing much? You made any more steps towards this new rig? You have been playing. Okay, good.
No, the rig has calmed down. I haven't sold the head rush yet. It's still up for sale. Okay. Anybody listening to this, if you do want a head rush FRFR, the 8-inch version, then I've got one for sale, or at least I have at this point of recording. I can recommend it very much so. It's a fantastic speaker. I'm just looking for something a bit different. But yeah, so no changes there. No changes with the rig. I mean, obviously, as much as I kind of talked about that rig being, having so many possibilities, the real fact of the matter is that amp, that catalyst is really only going to get used as an FRFR for the most part. But for some gigs, I may use it as an amp. But anyway, so no changes there. But what I have done, Kieran, is I harked back all the way to episode, it must have been episode 3 and 4 or 5 and 6, something like that. When we did the 8 steps, it was across two parts, wasn't it? So, arguably the guitar that I've got at the moment that needed the setup the most, but isn't really looking for fret level and dress, is my little Esquire, my Esquire, Esquire, the FSR one, Fender Special Run type guitar. Really cool. It's like a classic. It's not the classic vibe range, but what it is it's an Esquire, so it's a single pickup. But
which is cool.
Exactly, and I love the sound I get from it. But it's got like a Tele custom type finish in that it's got bound edges. So it's not an Esquire model that was ever released. Hence the FSR custom Esquire name. So it's Fender Special Run. And I really love playing that guitar, but I did some measurements after you did your the last 2 episodes. Obviously, you've gone over doing the truss rod and you've gone over doing the bridge, and we spoke in those episodes about particular measurements. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get my kit out, my the setup kit that I've got. I still need to get some tools for that. Actually, I realised this week I haven't got a decent set of Allen wrenches that is dedicated for. I've got some in the shed, but I don't want to get stuff out of the shed when I'm doing the guitar. I want to have my guitar setup kit separately.
Definitely.
And I took some measurements anyway of like the action, and it was way high. I sent you a message, didn't I? It was like, I think I was getting 2.5 mil, going on for 2 3/4 mil on the 6th string at the 12th fret. And I knew it had a bit of a high action. And I've spoken before, haven't I, about I enjoy a little bit of a fight in the guitar, but I don't want to be headbutting the thing. It's ridiculous. At 2.5 mil, I thought, well, how low can I get it? And so I did some measurements. So it's interesting how you kind of think, well, if it's that high, I'm going to have to do everything. I have to adjust the truss rod. But even though it's got high action, when I did the check, you told me to check I did the capo on the 1st fret, and then from about the 15th or 17th, I put my thumb on and then checked the height at around the 8th or 9th fret. And it was really low. It was like really, really low. I could barely just make the string tap against it. So I thought, well, the neck obviously has got
straight.
The neck straight. It doesn't have too much relief. That's not the reason the action's high. And then we're getting on to today. We're talking about nuts, right? We're talking guitar nuts. Sorry, I should say. We don't mean crazy guitarists. Anyway, we're talking about nuts today, and I did ask you, what's a quick measurement I can do to check the nut height's okay, and you showed me that. And that measurement was fine as well, so it really was down to saddle height. That whole high action was just down to that one of 3 things. So I brought the saddle height down. I realised the radius on the fretboard is 10-inch radius, exactly. It's not 9.5. I thought it might be 9.5. With it being an Esquire and based on an old one, I actually first thought it might be 7.25. But no, 10-inch radius on the fretboard. The radius as it was set up out of the box, because I haven't touched it, was exactly right, believe it or not.
Oh,
it
was
exactly.
Did it set the saddle pieces up?
They were perfect.
Great.
They're perfectly radius, which is surprising because it's a 3-saddle guitar. It's not a 6 saddle. There isn't a saddle per string. There's a saddle for every 2. But it was still just like I put my radius gauge on the strings, and it was just perfect.
Beautiful.
So I just started then. I just lowered the 6th string down to. I thought, let's try 1.5 mil. Let's just drop it right down, and then try to go a little bit less on the high E string. And then I kind of did a thing where I thought I'll count the turns to get to that, and then I'll do the same turns on the other one strings in between and check the radius, and then just a couple of little adjustments and kept the same radius, and then tuned up. And checked it, and it was too low. It was buzzing out in certain areas, and I'm sure I could have done some other adjustments, but it was buzzing out really high up, past the 12th string, 12th fret on the low E string. So I just raised everything up a bit. I think I've got about 1.6 mil on the 6th string now, and a little bit less on the 1st string, and the radius is just right, and everything's ringing really clear, and it's just transformed my playing experience. I mean, I sat down after that, practiced for an hour, learning some stuff I've been planning to learn, just some kind of solos that I've always loved and things like that, and some songs, and it was just great. So yeah, I mean, just testament there to what you've been trying to say over the last few episodes about, this is why this is the most important adjustment to make on the guitar, right? The action height. I mean, it can literally transform the playing experience. And
for sure.
Yeah, so yeah, really, really good week. And I intend to do the same thing with the Gretsch. But the Strat and the Les Paul, both of those really need a fret level. undress, which is, that's a tech's job. You know, I could learn how to do it, but I'd rather an experienced tech do it and end up with a really, you know, improved experience on those instruments as well, get them back to how they were.
Yeah, absolutely. The fret leveling and recrowning and all of that, it's a time consuming. I love doing it. Provided
really?
I've got the time. Oh yeah, man. Provided I've got the time set aside to do it, put some music on, just get into it. But it's a very repetitive, like monotonous task, but you do need to concentrate and focus so you don't mess it up. But it's such a rewarding thing. And you know, even I know you said on your telly and your Gretsch that wouldn't need doing because the fretware is not there. I suspect you're entirely right, but it's not uncommon for I would say, you know, up to modestly priced guitars to still come out of factory with the frets there or thereabouts, but you know, potentially still with some that could benefit from being really truly checked to see if they're all level and true. But so you could potentially look to cheat down that action on your telly even lower. But as you rightly said, Matt, I mean, these things, before you get into fret leveling and recrowning and going into how you do that, or even not wanting to get down that route, just doing these 3 steps to dial in your action, as well as the 8 basic maintenance steps, can transform a guitar into something that just becomes a joy to play. And it is subjective. It's definitely subjective, right? Action is a personal thing. It's how you like a guitar to play and feel. And I'm certainly not someone that's bound by those numbers and measurements that I've been giving out over the last couple of weeks, because I don't really rely on them. I use them as a guide occasionally. Most of what I do now is down through feel and touch but sometimes if you're starting out doing this, or you just want to double check and see where things are at, having those measurements that we've given out in the last couple of episodes as a starting point is really kind of quite useful. And it certainly was useful for you to be able to measure it and go, because you sent me a picture originally, right? And you said, have a look at this picture. Do you think my action looks high? And it looked high to me in the pictures, but a picture is kind of difficult to see in real life exactly what that means. And I said, well, does it feel high to you? And you were like, yeah, I think it does. And I was like, well, what's the measurements? And you came back straight away. You'd measured it, and you're like, the measurements are this and this. Well, I was like, well, to my mind, that is high. And I reckon you could take at least a millimeter off both of those measurements on the top E and the low E comfortably. You should be able to take that off comfortably without any other kind of invasive methods like re-leveling and crowning the frets and stuff like that. But I'm glad it's worked for you, mate. And it is that's what I'm saying. And it's such a nice thing for people listening to hear that haven't done this, right? And all the kind of luthiers and techs that listen to this show will be just going, yeah, this is what we get paid to do. Yeah. It's kind of there's nothing more rewarding and satisfying than taking a guitar that, you know, isn't a £3,000 guitar, or that hasn't had like this full like treatment, and giving it back to somebody having done some of these steps, and they're just like, wow, this feels complete. I don't know what you've done, but this feels like a brand new instrument. This feels like a totally different instrument. I love playing it. And it's not a dark art as to what we've done. What we've done is these steps that we're telling you about. We've done all the 8 basic maintenance steps of setup, and by and large, to dial in the action, provided the frets are still in good nick and good condition, we've done the 3 steps that we've talked about in the last few weeks, which is set the truss rod properly, adjust the saddle action properly, and cut the nut properly. And do those, and that's the results you get. Obviously, if there's fretwork and stuff involved, then that's a different beast. Yeah, I'm pleased, mate. I'm pleased you're giving it a go, and I'm pleased it's worked out for you. So yeah, keep doing it.
Me too. Yeah, man, I'm super pleased with it. I mean, I kind of want to, like I said, want to feel that improvement on my other guitars, but it's a process, isn't it? And the other thing to remember is that this is something that isn't kind of like, it's not set and forget. You know, you kind of, over time, you're going to need to redo these things, and I might find that as I get more confident, I can improve on what I've done already. But like, I really enjoyed going through those 8 steps again, man. You know, just like taking the strings off, and I gave the frets a clean and a polish, and I lemon oiled the fretboard, and I put I lubricated all the string passing points, including the string post on the headstock, and I lubricated where the strings pass over the saddles, and lubricated the nut, and gave the guitar a full polish and a clean down. And man, and just after a good hour of work on all that stuff, just sat down to play it, and I was like, it's like a new guitar. This is great. This is better than what you experience in the shop. You don't get that. And music stores take the guitars out of the box, tune them up, cast an eye over them, make sure they're not broken, and then stick them on the wall.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I honestly don't.
Sorry to interrupt this conversation. However, if you're a regular listener, then you should definitely come and join us on our Facebook group, the Guitar Geek Hangout. You can interact with other listeners of the show, engage in general chit-chat about guitars, music and pedals, or just share images of your guitar collection for everyone to look at. Regardless, it's the next place you should visit online. Go and join the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook now before you carry on listening to the rest of this podcast. I'll wait here. Hey, welcome back.
I mean, from a sales and marketing perspective, it's such a maybe they feel that they don't need to, right? And clearly, there's work involved. And in terms of volume, if you're a big guitar store, then I know a lot of guitar stores, particularly the online ones, are good at advertising that they give their guitars a 100-point check list, and it spends time with a tech before it gets shipped out. Oh, I don't know. I'm making up numbers. Maybe that's used cars. But whatever. Do you know what I mean? Whatever it is, they go through a checklist.
Halford's winter guitar check.
Yeah, that's
your guitar
exactly.
ready
They do
winter.
that, and they send it through to you. But like when I worked in a guitar store, when I was a lad, when I worked in a guitar store, when a guitar came in and we unboxed them. That was a cool time. It's like being a kiddie at Christmas. Like the guitars have come in, let's unbox it, let's see what we got. It's brilliant. It's great. Because I used to just sit in the store and play these guitars all day anyway. I used to sell a few every now and again. But I digress. The point was, we'd take them out the box and we'd play them and we'd go, that's pretty decent. Actually, that's set at a nice level. It's left the factory. Great. Fine. Give it a dust, put a price tag on it, stick it up on the rack. More often than not, we take it out of the box and we go, strings are tarnished from being in storage for a while, stick a new set of strings on it, dial in the action, do the eight basic steps. I mean, we didn't call it that. We just say, no, give it a setup, put a new set of strings on it, then put it on the shelf. Because from a customer perspective, I really hate this, and I'm seeing this so much more than I ever used to when I was younger. You walk into a guitar shop, ask to try it out, sit down and play it. The thing's not in tune. It's poorly set up. It's got a tarnished naff set of strings on it that have clearly just been oxidized from just it sitting in storage or whatever for too long. And then you're expected to try it out and fall in love with it and part with your hard-earned cash. It's like, I've literally been in guitar stores where I've given them, the feedback, and they've said, what do you think? Do you like it? And I said, well, I think the guitar's nice, but it's just so badly set up and needs a new set of strings on it that I'm not going to buy it because it needs work doing to it. So, I'll give you the opportunity if you want to give it to your tech and do some basic setup and maintenance work on it so that I can actually try the guitar out, then I'll entertain buying it. But I'm not going to do it if you're not going to put in the work into to make the guitar as good as it can be. And so I just think it's a really silly thing from a sales perspective. It shows a lack of pride and care and attention to me. And I'm seeing it more and more in guitar stores where it comes out of the box and it goes on the shelf. And I've even seen this practice, which I really dislike because I think it's just mugging the customer off. Where and certain guitar stores have tried it with me when I've bought stuff where I've said, "Will you set the guitar up?" If it's near or thereabouts, but I know it needs a setup, and this is silly because I know I'm going to do it myself anyway. But it's my time and effort as well. I'm like, "Can you set this up for me before I get it?" And they go, "Oh, well, what we normally advise, sir, is that you take it home and play it for a few months or so and then bring it back to us and we'll set it up because it's a guitar and it needs time to settle in and it's brand new and you need to get used to it." I'm like, what a load of drivel. That's just a way of pushing it down the road for the customer and avoiding a cost. Yeah, it's like, no, you can put a new set of strings on it and set it up and get it nice if you want me. I mean, back in the day when a customer would never say that to a guitar we were selling because our guitars were well maintained and kept in good order. And we change the strings on them if they've been sitting on the shelf for 6 months. Yeah. Change the strings out on that one. It's been there too long with those set of strings on. No one's going to buy it. Anyway, I went off on a bit of a rant there about things that annoy me when I go into guitar shops. But
no, you're absolutely right then.
Would you go to a used car dealership, or even a new car dealership for that matter?
Yeah.
And the car's covered in dirt, and it's been out on 15 test drives, and there's mud all over the inside from where somebody's done it, and they go, "Here you go, here's our car. Do you want to buy it?" And you go, "No," because it's not right. It's not how you present something for sale.
No, exactly that. Maybe I like the car. Maybe I want to buy it from you, but I'm not going to take it from you until you've presented it in an acceptable form for delivery, right? Clean, ready to go, with a bit of pride, outside and inside. At least, hoover it out and dust it down. I mean, I completely agree. I think it surprises me that more stores don't take more pride in the instruments they're selling. Yeah. And actually, what's the cost to? It's just time, really, because you might put a new set of strings on, but how much do guitar? I mean, guitar stores. That's where the margin is in guitar stores, right? Because the cost of a pack of strings to them at cost price is nothing really. For the sake of stick a pair of Rotor Sound on, it's going to cost you a guitar store a couple of quid to put a nice. And whilst you're changing the strings, oil or clean the fretboard, just give it a once over, half an hour, check a few of those basic things, check the action, make a few adjustments, stick it up on your shelf, and then it's ready to go. And actually, that little bit of time that you spent, it might have cost you a few quid in parts and, a tenner in time for the person that you employ in your shop to do that or whatever, but that actually might mean you sell it 6 months faster than you would have done. I mean, it's pays to... You've got to speculate to accumulate, haven't you? So why not do those things?
Have some pride. Have some pride in what you do. So to all those guitar stores out there that take a guitar out of the box and stick it on the shelf without even checking it over, shame on you. Shame on you. And for those of you that fob off your customers by saying, "Oh, go and try it, sir, for a few months and then bring it back and we'll talk about having it set up for you." Shame on you. How dare you.
Absolutely.
For any of those guitar stores that do the opposite and take it out of the box, give it a once over, give it a tweak and a little setup just to make it a much more comfortable playing experience because the guitar's adjusted or acclimatized or the strings are tarnished in transit and storage, and they get it nice before they hang it up on the shelf. Good on you. You've got pride in what you do, and you will. I hope you sell as many guitars as you wish to. And if you are one of those guitar stores, get in contact with us, and we'll give you a shout out and say this is a guitar store to go to because they have pride in what they do.
Because I have no doubt in my mind that some of the bigger guitar stores that are well known all around the world are the ones that don't do that well enough.
Oh, they don't do it. Don't do it. Oh, we can't do it. We sell hundreds of guitars every day, and the cost of doing that, and our customers don't know, blah, blah. Shame on you.
Exactly. Have
pride in the industry you represent. Don't just shift units.
Yeah.
Shift instruments that are going to make people happy to play the guitar.
I've got a very good friend, close friend of mine I've known for years, who works in the office at a very large guitar store in this country, a very famous one, based out of the southeast, and one with a very prominent YouTube channel. I'm not going to say any more about them, but he says their phone is ringing off the hook every day with people wanting to return things and not happy with what they get, and I think that's testament to that. It's not
rocket
good
science. It's not rocket science, and it's the way I was schooled in the guitar shop is have pride in what you're selling and presenting to the customer. I mean, that's how you have a successful business where people will pay for that. They'll pay a little bit extra versus shifting units, online and at pace to make money. They'll pay a bit extra for knowing that somebody has selected the guitar, made it as good as it can be, and then handed it to them in a way that it's fit for purpose. Anyway, well, yeah, of course you would.
But you asked me the question, and we've this week, and we've got onto this little rant, this little pontification, maybe. But about yourself, mate. How's your week been? With what have you done guitar wise?
Yeah, what have I done? I think I mentioned to you last time that January and February seem to be silly season for people maybe playing their guitars over Christmas and realizing that they need their guitar set up. So then they get in touch with me in January and February, and maybe it's the cold weather that kicks in and throws things out. I don't know, but I've been inundated.
It's quiet time for gigs, I'd imagine, as well. So,
There you go. It's quiet time for gigs. If you're out doing
weddings and stuff, weekend in, weekend out for the summer, now's the time, I imagine, where they've got the most opportunity to, give you their instruments for a week too, and not have to worry about not having a guitar at home, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've been doing a fair bit of that, which again is really enjoyable. I love doing setups and stuff on guitars and giving their guitar back to somebody and them going, wow, this feels brilliant. It's really rewarding. It's not my main job. I do it as a side hustle, as it were, and I take on the work that I want to take on, really, because it's not my main job. And I just love doing it. But it's which is kind of what prompted these last few episodes where we've had a segment on here's some stuff you can do yourself. Because although I've accrued this knowledge and practiced it over more than half my life, so it's second nature to me. Kind of feels like cheating a little bit, really, on some of it, because you can do it yourself with the right tools and confidence and practice. Some people can't, and that's fine because
I could install central heating in my house with the right tools, the right confidence, and the time. But I really don't want to, and if I mess it up, then that's a serious problem, right? That's why people pay for expertise. So there you go.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. And maybe some people, it's often surprising to me, because this is different to my outlook and the conversations that you and I have. But the number of pro musicians who I speak to, incredible musicians, but have no desire to learn that side of the instrument. Right?
Yeah.
They are, and nor should they have to. It's not a rule. It's not, just because I can drive a car doesn't mean I've got any idea about how to change the spark plugs. I mean, I do, but I don't do it myself because I'd rather pay someone else to do it. So there is that element of it. Anyway.
So you've had a busy week. You're still busy then with doing setups for people?
Yeah, and then learned a few new songs for the set list, which I've got a gig tomorrow night up in Swindon. It's a bit of a trek.
Oh yeah, you do that every few months, is it? One of your guys in your band is up in Swindon, so you go and do a gig up there. A couple of hours drive. But yeah, trying out the new numbers. So excellent. Looking forward to those. There's some good ones in there. We're doing Elton John's Saturday Night, which is really good fun to play on a guitar. Yeah.
It's a lot of work considering this is only a 4-piece.
Yeah. I used to play that in Lucy's band.
Did you?
And she did a version, because did you know Nickelback did a version of it? A really rocking version.
No.
Yeah, you should check it out. That's the version we did. It's fantastic. It's all guitars, mate. It's fantastic.
Nice. I'll have to have a listen to that. But we got it sounding pretty decent. Yeah. Nickelback have come up a lot in our conversations recently.
I know. What have we done?
Actually, I was chatting to the drummer in our band. He and I often have these little text conversations about music and stuff that we listen to, very much like you and I do, or other friends do.
That's nice that you talk to the drummer.
Well, he's also a guitarist as well.
Oh, so, okay, excellent.
Yeah, phenomenal drummer, and he's really into heavy music, right? He really loves his like metal and all the way from modern stuff to kind of throwback stuff. But I don't think he'd heard any Nickelback. And he was like, yeah, I've never really gone into Nickelback. I was like, yeah, I don't think it would agree with your kind of metal tendencies. They were always a little bit, frowned upon for not really being angry enough or whatever. So I sent him a few tracks to listen to, and he's like, this is actually pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Anyway. Saturday night Elton John we're doing. What else we do? Tom Jones, Stereophonics, Mama Told Me Not to Come. Oh yeah,
that's a good track. That I haven't played that. I haven't heard that for a while. Yeah, good song.
It's a good track. So that one. Love Really Hurts Without You, Billy Ocean. It's just that's a party piece. Yeah, there you go. Except we've got to drop it. It's a good song. We heard it at a wedding gig that we did last year. And spontaneously, all of us, while we were in the dressing room, just started singing along to it. And we're like, this is like a secret shame song that we're all liking. Shall we? We're all really getting into this way too much. Shall we chuck it in the set? So 6 months later, it's gone in the set now. Although, and our singer can hit very high notes. We have had to drop the key significantly because damn, that's a high song. What else? There's one more. Oh yeah, Robbie Williams, Let Me Entertain You.
Oh, nice tune.
Yeah.
F major power chords.
F major power chords all the way.
Yeah.
Again, sounding surprisingly good considering it's just a 4-piece, but that's where delay pedals and wah pedals and lashings of distortion and crunch tones used at various gain staging helps create a wall of noise. How am I going to play this?
How am I going to play? Just press everything, Kieran. Just turn everything on.
Well, I've got to do a keyboard. I've got to do the keyboard parts, the guitar parts, and the brass solo. And it's just there's only one of me.
Yeah, I know.
But
a trombone hanging out your backside. Anyway, you need a MIDI guitar, don't you? You need a guitar with that one. Was it the old, didn't Fender do like the VG Strat or something that had MIDI built in, so you could just have like a connection to your amp, but also to maybe that's what you need. Maybe you need a synth. Maybe that's your next rig. You need a synth rig so you can actually trigger some I'm joking, by the way. I could tell the way you're wincing. Yeah. For our listeners, obviously you can't see us, but Kieran looks like he's just smelt a really bad fart all of a sudden. I mean, maybe he has to actually.
It's whenever any mention of the word MIDI comes up, it just fills me with because I remember playing around with MIDI stuff back in the 90s and just thinking this is just, I need a computer degree to understand any of this. I'm sure it's all very simple nowadays, but yeah, MIDI in me is never.
I think it's just as complex.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, and my brain is just not. Yeah, guitar playing is where I go to escape any of the technical stuff and just like to make some noise.
Exactly.
As anyone who's ever played with me will know, zero music theory, just lots of guitar faces and pentatonic shenanigans.
Yeah, maybe it needs to be louder. That's the answer to everything. Maybe. I'm not quite getting this part right. Yeah. Just play it louder.
I just stomp on some more pedals. That's it. That's my answer. How do I Actually, having said that, though, I am really interested. I don't know if you've tried this out, but I'm going to see if I can get hold of one. So they appear to be pretty rare at the moment. But TC Electronic did this pedal called the Mimic or something, which basically is like a doubling pedal, but it's a bit more sophisticated than just a basic doubling delay. It actually supposedly takes your input guitar signal, and I think maybe it's designed best to be used in stereo, and I don't have a stereo rig, but I think you can cheat it just with a normal rig. I think it still works.
You can, I know about this pedal.
You know about it, and so if it's correct in what I've kind of read about it, it just thickens up your tone, but it actually does something supposedly quite clever, where it takes your input signal and then instantaneously creates this slightly different attack sounding delayed second guitar over the top of it or something, which basically it's trying to mimic the sound of two guitarists playing rather than one, which I'm quite intrigued by if I can get hold of one of these pedals, which I can't.
Yeah, there's some good reviews online of them and some good videos of some metal players. Metal players seem to love it because obviously that's something you do a lot in metal. You double track and triple track your guitars to get that huge sound, and it's not the same as just having a short delay. If you had the Mimics, what it's doing, it's just doing a very short delay, like maybe 20 to 30 milliseconds or whatever. So you hear this other signal, but the difference is if you did that, then it's always going to be 20 or 30 milliseconds, everything you play. Whereas if you're double tracking your guitar in your studio, you're going to be coming in and out. You might be 20 milliseconds earlier or 20 milliseconds after, or you might be 40 milliseconds. You get this kind of movement. So what the Mimic's doing is, as well as doing that delay, it's constantly randomly changing the delay time as well, so that it feels more naturally like a second guitarist is. It's a really, really clever pedal, but it is essentially just use of delay in a particular context. But it sounds fantastic. I think it does work really well in a mono setup as well. I think you do benefit in stereo, but still, that's probably a great thing because you could stamp on that just for choruses, and things like that. That's it. when you get that widening effect.
I use my delay pedal. It's made me think I need to get another delay pedal, because I like a longer delay and a more atmospheric delay in some kind of solos and stuff where you want to add that. But invariably, I'm using my delay pedal now within this band just to add that short little delay that almost you don't really notice it in the mix.
Yeah.
Other than it makes the guitar just sound fuller and more.
Opens it up. It almost makes it feel like a room. You're adding the sound of a room. You know, like the sound you get from like that first reflection from the back of a room. It's like that, isn't it? It's subtle. It's more of a feel. Yeah,
it's better. It's better than a reverb than just adding lashings of reverb to it. It does more than that. So either a second delay pedal, but if I can get, because I think TC Electronic did a mini version of this Mimic pedal, which is what I'm after. I think you can still get a hold of the full kind of size one, but I don't really want or have the space of footprint on my board left to accommodate that. And I think when it first released, I think like there were some places that were doing it for like 25, 30 quid. Which is a bargain. So I'm trying to find even a second-hand one of these little Mimic minis that I can. I think the price has jumped up now. I think because they've been discontinued or something, you can't get them for that price. But so I think people are selling them for silly money. But anyway, just on that subject of how you can thicken out your guitar sound.
But you do need another delay pedal. Just saying.
In all honesty, if I can't get hold of one of these, would you do that? Just get like another little mini delay. I know you wouldn't. You'd get a Helix rig and a Catalyst, but if I did one, should I just do that? Just whack another delay pedal on the end of the board and just have that as like a shorter delay for thickening out the sound? You could
do. You could just use a short delay. But like I said, the problem is it would be very fixed, and you might not try it. I mean, use whatever delay pedal you've got now. Low feedback, so you just get one repeat, short delay time. Set the level how you like it, and see how it feels. And then go from there. So if you like it, then the Mimic's going to do that, but even better. The Mimic is available still online, but the price has shot up by the looks of it. I mean, the mini one you can get for about 100 quid on Reverb. I'd wait until the price comes back down. That always happens with TC Electronic. They always do. You'll see their prices change quite drastically sometimes, depending. I
think it's a few years old now. I think
it is.
I think it's a good 4 or 5 years old. So I just wonder if it's been discontinued now, and that's why the second-hand market has gone through the roof.
That's a good point. Maybe it is.
It's not doing them anymore. I think that's what put me off buying it, knowing that it was a £25 pedal that people are selling for 100 odd quid now. It just annoys me. But
it could be. You could be right. Maybe that's what it is. It could be that it's literally been discontinued, and now because people do love that pedal in certain situations for live use, for doubling up a single guitar sound, maybe it's just become really, really popular. But I'm just having a look on TC's website. I can't see it. Maybe it is discontinued. If you know, leave us a comment in wherever.
Or if you're TC Electronic listening to this and you've got any new old stock sitting there that you'd like to lend the Guitar Smarts podcast for me to try out at a gig and give you yet another favourable review of TC Electronic, that now that there's two of your pedals on my board, what have I got on there? I've got the Polytune and I've got the Spark Mini Boost now as well.
Absolutely. And if you go back about 20 episodes when we did a £300 pedal board challenge, my pedal board was almost entirely TC Electronic, guys.
TC Electronic. You are a massive TC Electronic fanboy.
Great.
But for good reason.
Value for money. Great pedals. That's why,
Yeah. Anyway, we're not sponsored by them, and they haven't sent us any free stuff yet. So we can but dream.
Chance would be a fine thing. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, mate, let's wrap this up, right? Not the podcast. Let's wrap up the series that we've been doing over the last few weeks now, because we had that fantastic episode about the truss rod, which was super informative. Last week was massively helpful too, in terms of what we do to set up bridges, tremolo systems, etc. And the final kind of piece of this whole guitar action setup piece is to do with the guitar nut, right? So let's make a start. Where do you start with that?
Well, it's easy to check pretty much at any stage. So I'll teach you how to measure it first, right?
Great. Okay.
Because as you did with your telly this week, you kind of check the truss rod relief using the ways that we'd shown you. You checked the action at the nut, because you and I had a little text exchange around how to do that. You knew how to do it anyway, but you checked it. And then you determined that, okay, now this is mostly a saddle issue. So you went and corrected that. So I'll teach you how to very quickly measure it. But what I would say is, if it's something that you're then going to go and adjust, which, as I said, I think for a lot of people, just plucking up the courage and the confidence and going slowly with this, you should be able to give it a go and get some incredible results. You will be surprised at how taking off the smallest amount of material gives such huge benefits and impact to the playability of the guitar. It's quite mind-blowing. But so I'd say action at the nut, right? In order to measure it, let's start there. So what you need to do is press down on the 3rd fret. I generally use my thumb of my right hand. So again, while you're sitting in a playing position with the guitar on your lap, or you could have it up on a bench. There's no drama there, but I often find it's easier to have a look at these things with the guitar in playing position while I'm sat down on my lap. Press down on the 3rd fret. Okay. And then, again, like we did do you remember when we were doing the truss rod, where we were doing quite a big stretch by pressing down our thumb on the kind of higher end frets and then reaching over into the middle of the neck. This time it's a much shorter stretch. So you take your thumb and then you reach over as you're pressing down on the 3rd fret. Let's say we're on the 6th string, the low E. I'm pressing down on the 3rd fret of the low E, and I'm reaching over with my index finger, my first finger, and then just looking to press down on the 1st fret area.
So right? just a couple of fret stretch, not fret stretch. That's noisy. So literally thumb on the 3rd fret to flatten the string down against that fret. Yeah. And then I'm tapping on top of the string onto the top of the first fret itself, right?
Exactly.
So we're not fretting the string you would when you're playing. You're tapping the string so that it touches the metal of the fret itself, right?
Exactly.
Got it.
Okay. And you're tapping down or pressing down, and what you're basically trying to do is see how much clearance is on each string in turn as you go through this on each string, relative to the top of that 1st fret. So you're just trying to see how much, let me say in maybe simpler terms. Well, you're pressing down on the 3rd fret. See how much bounce there is as you press down on the first fret whilst holding at the 3rd fret. Effectively, what you've done is you've created a straight edge, right, between the 1st fret and the nut.
Got it. Okay.
But sorry, between the 3rd fret and the nut. Right?
Yes,
and you've created a straight edge between the 3rd fret and the nut, and you're pressing down at the 1st fret to see how much clearance there is there.
And I'm assuming you don't actually want much clearance, right? You just want it to be enough clearance so that you can basically hear a tap of the string. I mean,
no, absolutely. So this is where the art and science kind of overlaps here, right? So basically, it should be able to bounce just a small amount before it touches that first, but only just, right?
Okay.
Now, if you want to be more scientific about this, you can get your feeler gauge, and you can, as you're pressing down on the 3rd fret, you can look to slide your feeler gauge in between the 1st fret wire and the bottom of the string, right? Now, if you're someone that's into measurements and stuff like that, I would say, like, for your low E, I mean, this is how fractional we're talking. So you're going to need feeler gauges that can deal with this type of tolerance. But 0.15 millimeters on the low E, and top E, these are measurements taken off one of my guitars, is 0.08 millimeters.
Wow.
So
that's tiny, isn't it? This is,
Right. So on the low E strings, you'll definitely be able to see, like, even though it sounds minuscule, you'll be able to see that tiny little bit of bounce. On the top E strings, or the top E string, or the B or the G, literally you're looking for about, the old way of doing this was to get a cigarette paper, like the old Rizzler papers, and see if that slid underneath and use that almost as a feeler gauge, because it's that thin. And another way to do it is just listen, use your ears. Can you tap? And it just makes that little high-pitched kind of clinking noise as you tap on the fret. If you can hear that, you know you've got some clearance. You might not even be able to see it with your eyes.
That's true.
But
you can
it might
be so close that you can't see it. But there's enough space so that when you do tap it, it just makes that noise as it travels onto the... Because even if you don't get any noise when you tap it and you can't quite see, then it's probably just touching, right?
And it might be too low.
It might be too low,
it might be too low, right? The danger is, right, so certainly on the low E, the A and the D strings, you're going to be able to want to see some clearance. And as I've said, it's going to be very small clearance. We're talking like 0.15, 0.2 of a millimeter clearance, and you will be able to see that by eye. It will basically be a very small little bounce before it touches the but certainly enough that you'll see it. And you want that bit of extra clearance on those lower strings because they're thicker strings, they reverberate more, they arc through their travel a bit more, so you want a bit more space. With those top strings, like the G, the B, and the top E, you can really, if you get this right, you can get a really small amount of clearance before it then touches the top of that first fret. And when you start, I mean, what we're talking about here is the action really when you're doing those open chords that we all kind of love to play and go. I mean, it just makes them effortless. It feels like the strings aren't even underneath your fingers when you're playing them. It's wonderful, but it will have a surprising impact on the action all the way up to the 12th fret. You'll be amazed.
Really?
And so you'll need to go and back and just recheck some of the bits that you've done with your truss rod and saddle stuff, but only just to double check. But it's incredible what difference it is cutting the nut slot as low as you can, but not too low. And this is the danger, not too low, so that then what happens is you've got not enough clearance. And when you play those open strings, they will buzz out because they're now then hitting the first fret, right? That's how we measure it.
So let's say we've made a measurement, and I've come to the conclusion that I've actually got quite a high nut. So and it's apparent across all the strings, maybe at slightly varying levels. Is there? And I'm thinking as an engineer here, so not everyone who's listening may think the same way, but I guess there's two things that you could measure if you're measuring this, and one is that, let's say I make a measurement, yes, the nut is high, but I've got a different height issue for each string. I'm assuming you would then cut each nut slot to correct that. But if I had a nut that was consistently high, so each string was a consistent amount, is it still a valid way of solving the problem to take the nut off and take height off of it from underneath, and so that you're not actually changing the nut slots, but you're just changing the actual size of the nut itself? Would your approach be to always try and lower the slot to be the correct height? You know, is it both approaches?
Personally,
okay?
Yes.
Right,
but,
okay.
Well, nothing's wrong in doing it, right? But I would only go for the approach that you've described if the nut is significantly oversized and the slots are already not cut anywhere near deep enough. Sometimes you get a guitar where the nut has literally just been chucked in there. I see it very rarely on particularly new instruments. More often than not, even cheaper instruments, more often than not, they've just cut the nut slots on the generous side, and actually you could dial that in a lot better. But they do it just as a kind of, get them near as damn it kind of approach. It's very rare that I see a nut that's just completely cut so badly that they're that high.
Well, I guess on a cheaper guitar, arguably the person who's fitting the nuts is probably not a luthier, right? That's probably just a trained person on a specific part of that production line, and they're meant to do something within a certain tolerance, right? Which may not always be perfect, could always be better. So I guess you're talking about trying to make things better, and within, you're tightening those tolerances, aren't you? You're trying to make it as good as it can be.
Yeah, and taking the nut off the guitar it shouldn't be a difficult process to do, provided somebody hasn't, used an excessive amount of extremely strong glue to glue it in. Literally, when I replace the nut on a guitar, or any luthier does, I'm not a luthier, I'm just a tech, but you only need a tiny little bit of contact super glue in there just to hold it in place. Yeah, tiny little dots just to hold it in place, so that if you ever then need to change the nut later down the line, a quick knock, and it will nicely come out. But there's two reasons why I wouldn't advise taking the nut out unless you absolutely have to achieve a lower nut action, is because you always then do run the risk of damaging the finish around the nut when you're taking out a nut, depending on how it's been glued in, and that's always a risk. And so why take that risk? Secondly, I think it's a lot more time consuming and potentially you're likely to take off a lot more material than you need to by taking the nut out and sanding the underside of it down and then popping it back in, putting all the strings back on,
do it unevenly as well, right?
Potentially do it. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I just think it's a long-winded way of doing it, and probably not necessary. And you're likely to take too much off of it, and then you're going to end up having to shim the nut back up and all that kind of stuff. I would say the easiest way, and the tools that you should invest in are. Well, it's pretty simple. Maybe some feeler gauges, which we've spoken about before, just to get the measurements right, and some proper nut slot cutting files. This is where it is worth spending a little bit of money. I've got the StewMac ones, which I use, I got them years ago, so they're phenomenally expensive, and they probably still are, but they've served me really well, and I know they're accurate. But it's a set of files which effectively have been made to a good tolerance, and I have this set of files that matches basically the string gauges
got it right.
that are commonly used, right? So I've basically got files that will cut each string gauge size based on a set of 9s or a set of 10s, and so you're cutting the nut slots accurately for the string that's going to go into it. But you can get nut files from Amazon, I dare say, and I'm sure they'll do the job admirably, as long as you don't buy a completely cheap set. So look at the reviews. But that's what you'll need.
That's an interesting point, I guess, as well, because I suppose if you're used to using 10s and you decide after listening to some Joey Landreth or Ariel Posen that you want to go and get some 17s or something like that, all of a sudden you're going to need to adjust these things, right? Your 17s aren't going to fit into the same nut slot as your 10s used to fit into, and you might end up with things like tune instability issues, the string catching in the nut when it shouldn't. Correct. And pinging and things like that. So and actually, all the things we've discussed, you'd have to adjust, right? If you change your gauge,
Correct.
That's going to change your relief. That's going to change the balance of your tremolo. If you've got a balanced trem,
More often than not, I mean, it's there or thereabouts. So with the nut slot cutting files, if you're going up and down a gauge of string, so say you're going from 9s to 10s, you're probably not going to need to do anything to the nut. It's not that sensitive enough to know, and certainly your files will probably have you might not have all of the files necessary to do that. But if you're making extreme changes in string gauge, like you mentioned, then you will have to address how that is on the nut. The most often thing when you're going from 9s to 10 on a guitar is the truss rod relief, because those strings will pull differently and exert a different tension, and that's probably the only thing really that you're going to have to massively change.
Okay.
So you ready to start cutting a nut?
Yeah.
Then?
What do I do, Kieran? I'm sat. My nut is on the table in front of me. What do I do how do I make sure I do it well, and what are the mistakes to avoid?
So, okay. So first, what I would do is, if you've determined that your nut slots are too high, right? There's too much bounce and too much travel going on.
Yeah.
While you're pressing on the 3rd fret and then pressing down on the 1st fret, you can see actually these can come down. Right. The first thing I would do is say lay your guitar on a nice work surface, nice and flat, supporting the guitar body and supporting the neck nicely. So like get a proper neck rest or something to support the the guitar neck. There's loads available that you can use. But you want your guitar on a nice working surface. So we're not going to do this in the playing position anymore. This needs to be lying flat, face up, with the neck supported. What I would also do if you're a little bit nervous or doing this for the first time is get some of that kind of paper masking tape and put a couple of strips behind the nut on the headstock, just to protect the finish there in case you do over energetically go a little bit too far and the file hits the headstock. You might want to put some on the first fret as well, just to protect it there, but you shouldn't need to. But if you're in doubt, worry, just put some of that masking tape either side of the nut, basically. Yeah,
got it.
Then using the right thickness file per string gauge, what you need to do is effectively, you can keep all the strings on the guitar. In fact, you need to keep all of the strings on the guitar, right? And keep the guitar up to pitch, apart from the string that you're working on. So you're going to sequentially be going from the 6th string to the top E string. You're going to work down the strings in that systematic way. So guitar's tuned up to pitch, all the strings are on at tension. And so we're going to work on the low E string first. We know this is too high and needs to come down. Okay. So gently loosen the tension on that string, enough such that you can just lift the string out of its current nut slot and have it sitting outside of the nut slot. Yeah, but you don't need to slacken it off so it's completely flapping around the place. Cool. Then let's say we're using a set of 10 to 46s, right? I need to find my nut file that is 46, right? Okay. Not rocket science. Then what you want to do is, what I do is I position my body over the guitar. So I'm looking down on the neck and I've got a nice clear line of sight along the top of the neck, and I can see that the angle that my file is going into the nut slot itself is nice and straight. I'm not I'm not about to cut the nut at a weird angle. So make sure you can rest your file in that nut slot. But before you start cutting, make sure that you've got a nice straight line that follows
good point.
The line.
And you want to make
neck.
sure it's also perfectly so you want it to kind of not do this tilt left or right. So as you're cutting, you're going across, you want to be cutting perfectly down and perfectly in line of the string travel, right?
Exactly. Okay.
It's kind of like snooker, right? You want to be down, making sure your cue's straight and that you're not trying.
That's it. And the best way to do that is not sat in a chair looking at it. Yeah. It's stood up and over the top of the guitar, so you can see that your file is perfectly kind of perpendicular to the nut slot in that way, and that any cutting that you do make is going in a nice straight line in and out of the nut slot. So you can practice that without applying any pressure. You can just make sure that as you have a few practice runs before you do it if this is your first time doing it. Then what I would do is, as you're about to cut, what you actually want to do, ideally, is not cut the nut slot absolutely straight down and evenly. You want to be angling the file slightly towards the back of the nut, as if it's pointing down to the headstock. And what that does is it creates a nice break angle as the string travels through the nut slot. Right. It almost exits the nut slot at a downward pivot point towards the tuning peg, if that makes sense.
Because also, I guess, if you don't do that and you accidentally do it towards, then actually the string leaves the nut at the wrong point, and you could end up with the string being longer, the actual vibrating part, and then you can end up with noise in the nut, can't you, as the string vibrates in the nut. It shouldn't be. It should, like that edge of the nut where the fretboard starts, that should be the last point the string touches. Correct. So it's kind of like
The other thing that you can do that you'll know, and it's correctable, so don't panic. And it particularly happens on the higher strings, the thinner strings, is that if you haven't got your nut file nice and dead perpendicular and at the right angle, you'll end up almost carving like two grooves in the bottom of the nut slot. And have you ever had it where you've got a guitar and you're doing a string bend or something and you can hear it pinging?
Yes. Like this little high moving pitch from groove to groove almost.
That's exactly what's happening. And you can correct that very easily just by cutting that nut slot very gently again and smoothing out any kind of high points that you've got. But that's maybe something for a tech to do. But you can even that out. Anyway, on our low E string, which is where we've started, we're basically going to do maybe no more than 4 gentle, evenly applied passes of that file, backwards, forwards, stop.
Yeah.
And we've done those passes at a slight downward angle, as we've said, off the back of the nut, but making sure that we're still catching most of the nut slot, but as it's coming down off the back, just giving it a little bit extra. And all I've done there is 4 passes: 1 forward, 1 back, 1 forward, 1 back.
Okay, literally that's it. 1 forward, back, 1 forward, back. I guess because you can always take more material off, but if you go too far, you just can't add it back on, right?
Exactly, and you'll get a feel for this. The more nut you cut, you'll get a feel for the nut material, how much your file is taking off each time, and you'll get a feel for that very quickly. But the key tool you're going to need for doing this job is patience and concentration. Right? Once you've got your nut files, it's about patience and concentration. Yeah. Because the temptation is you do this too quickly, or you get zealous with it, and you'll end up taking off too much material and then having to correct it, which is going to be a longer time-consuming thing than had you just done a few passes at a time and then stopped. It's like when we talked about the truss rod. Quarter turn at a time, gently, check it again. Yeah. This is even more important because with a truss rod, you can just turn it back the other way. With this, it's more difficult to put material that you've carved away. It can be done, and I'll tell you how to do that in a minute. But so you've done your 4 passes, put the string back into the nut slot, bring it back up to tension, and do your measurement check again. Press down on the 3rd fret. How much have I taken off? And if you've done this correctly, what you should see is that it looks pretty much no different.
Okay.
You go, don't think I've taken anything off. You have, but you just can't see it yet.
Yeah. You need to do that test again, right? Yeah. Okay.
Do the test again and play it and see.
Okay.
And go, no, there's still not any more that's been taken off. So you repeat that step again. Loosen off the string tension, guitar back on the bench, position your body in the right way, align the fret file into the slot as we described, and do another 4 passes. And if you're doing it correctly and patiently and taking your time, you might need to do that whole process for 5 times before you go, okay, that is now. And it's almost a game with yourself, which is how low, because you will start to see the string go lower and look at it relative to the other strings. That's the other way to do it, is do your little measurement test on your 3rd and 1st fret and go, have I taken anything off? Well, check it using the 5th string, which you haven't touched yet, your A string, and go, oh yeah, look, that one is much higher now than this one. So you can check it relative to the other strings and just do it slowly to the point where you go, okay, I'm comfortable to stop there now.
Okay.
And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I wonder if a bit more can come off that. Maybe it can. Don't do it. You've probably taken it as far as you can.
Right,
and your next one will be the last one where you've gone, bugger, I've gone too far now. And now what's happening is the string, when I press on the 3rd and then press on the 1st, there's no bounce left, but there's no movement left, and I've gone too far.
Yeah. How do you... Sorry, carry on, Kieran. Don't mean to interrupt.
And I was going to say, the other way to check without measuring is to pluck the string and double check you're not hearing or beginning to hear any buzzing that can creep in. But do that. Yeah. And do the same process on each of those strings. So once you've done the 6th string, that's done. Then repeat the process on the 5th string, exactly the same, but using the appropriate nut file for the 5th string gauge. Yeah. And then you'll have got 2 strings done, and then you can see that the remaining 4 strings will be higher, and you just keep working all the way through.
Don't forget to change the file as you go from string to string. Don't accidentally use your 6th string file for everything. I bet that happens. I bet there's luthiers out there that have got halfway through carving a brand new bone nut they've spent hours doing and suddenly realise, I've been doing the 3rd string with the 4th string, I forget it. And then you kind of what do you do then? Do you mix dust with glue and try and add material back in or something like that?
Well, this is the thing. If you do go too far, look, it's not the end of the world. Okay? You don't need to chastise yourself and feel in any way a failure, because I still do this. periodically, confessions of a guitar tech. I still do this on my own instruments more often than a customer's instruments, because I just like to see how far I can push things on my own. I was going to say,
you're probably trying to stretch the boundaries of, I mean, you want your guitar action to be measured in microns, don't you?
Yeah. To be honest, I want my customers' guitars to do the same, but I'm also sympathetic that I like a really, really low slinky action, and sometimes that's not what everybody wants. So I take it low, and then I sit with the customer afterwards and I tell them, I can take this lower here at the saddle or at the nut if you'd like, and if you want it to go lower, then I will do it. But you play it and let's see how it feels now I've done all this, because it's got to be a personal preference thing.
Yeah, you're right.
Anyway, if you do go too far, you can fix it. And this is why having the masking tape that we've applied either side of the nut is really useful, because you're going to want to protect the area either side of the nut. So what you do is, this is a tried and tested technique. If it's a plastic nut or a composite nut, baking soda.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, baking soda. And you get yourself a little spatula or toothpick or something, and scoop up a little bit of baking soda on the end of that toothpick, and then pack it into the nut slot. Okay, pack it all the way to the top of the nut slot, and clear off any of the excess baking soda that's either side of the head of the nut. Now that's gone onto your masking tape. I know this sounds really amateur time, but
then
it's
into the oven at 220 degrees.
Right? No. You won't make a cake. You won't make a cake out of this. And then either using one of those fine little flow droppers that some super glue bottles have on them, or probably better still, putting a blob of thin super glue onto a piece of paper next to you, and again scooping some of that super glue up on the end of a toothpick. Just drop it, and by capillary action, that super glue will wick and flow into the baking soda.
Right. Okay.
And provided you've neatly filled the slot with baking soda and you haven't got loads of gunk either side of it, that super glue will wick beautifully into the baking soda. Leave it for 10 minutes. It's as hard as the original material.
Really?
Then you've got a nut slot that is virgin in its appearance and is ready to be cut for the first time. You just start again, and it lasts. It absolutely lasts. I mean, at some point you'll probably want to change the nut anyway, because the baking soda thing probably only lasts for a few years. I've got guitars that I've done it on, and it's if you do it properly, it just lasts. Yeah, and it's the same as the original material. That combination of baking soda and super glue dries as hard as the original stuff.
That's awesome. I've never known that before. That's a really cool tip. I'm going to remember that.
It works. If you've got a bone nut or a graphite nut or something that is a different material, then use or buy, and you can buy it off anywhere, Amazon, Luthier supplies. I've got little vials of graphite dust or Graphtec nut dust and bone dust, where... Right. You use that to fill the nut slot, and then you're using the right material, so it just blends in and matches. And you might need to do some work with a very small file just to take off any sharp bits or excess bits where the super glue has gone awry. But it's
interesting. Okay, that's cool to know.
It's easy to fix. Don't stress about it. It happens, and if in any doubt, just take it to a guitar tech and. If they say, you're going to need a new nut on that, they kind of are right. That would be the best thing. But the other alternative is to fill it back up with super glue, and it will work. It will absolutely work. Yeah. And but the best thing to do is not get into that situation in the first place.
Yes,
and just go slowly and
measure twice, cut once.
Thank you. Done.
There we go.
Done.
I've got a couple of very quick questions actually before because we're deep in it now. We're right at the end, and I actually just wanted to raise something interesting. Last year at Christmas, my wife bought me a fantastic book about Brian May's Red Special guitar. And one of the interesting things about that is because it was self-engineered. Him and his father built this guitar, and because his father was an absolutely fantastic engineer, and Brian May obviously himself knows what he's doing. They took their own approaches on some of the more traditional ways that guitars were built. Like, for example, I don't know if you know this, but the tremolo system on that guitar is kind of like, on a normal Strat or something, a normal tremolo system. The tremolo's fixed to the body, or it might be kind of against some screws, whereas on the Red Special, it's like a knife edge that's held against a slot by the string tension, so that it's the same very edge of that thing that moves. So it's very almost frictionless tremolo system. And the other thing which was interesting is he took an approach to the nut which is almost completely unique, which is where he's got a 0 fret. So some people listening to this might have a 0 fret, which kind of takes away the point of the nut height, right? But the nut then really becomes more like a string guide.
A string guide, exactly.
And what Brian May did for the Red Special is he did the 0 fret, and then the nut is a string guide, but his nut is the slot is filed right down, so the string's not sat on anything. It's literally just guided through a perfectly sized slot, which is an interesting approach. Is that still something you come across? You still come across 0 fret guitars, right?
Occasionally, they're pretty rare, but you do see them, and some people actually like to turn their guitars into 0 fret guitars, and you can do that as well. But as you say, in that instance, the nut slots can be taken all the way down to lower than that 0 fret. So people that don't know what a 0 fret is, it's effectively another fret that sits in front of the nut before you get to your first fret. And if we think about what the two contact points on the guitar are, that creates your kind of string kind of pivot points. It's on a normal guitar, it's the nut as one point and the saddle as the other point. On a 0 fret guitar, it is that 0 fret as your contact point that the string has the break over and the pivot over and your saddle. So in that instance, your nut is simply acting as a string guide to guide the string to the right path to the tuning peg. And actually, you can take the nut slots all the way down for that to make it as less of a contact point as possible. Which is cool. So why would you do it? Why? What are the benefits of doing that? So a lot of people say there's a good tonal benefit from having a zero fret because you've effectively got a smoother piece of metal that apparently affects the tone of the string in a different way and helps it resonate in a different way than it traveling over a piece of bone or plastic. So that's one bit. Some people feel that the 0 fret gives them better string bending qualities and feel because the string is effectively resting on the top of a fret crown, right? Which is a very singular point as opposed to sitting in a slot. Even though we've talked about creating a break angle in the nut as we're filing it, it's still effectively sitting over a larger surface area as it's traveling through a nut rather than a 0 fret. So some people feel that the 0 fret, it has benefits on tone and string bending properties and just helps the strings reverberate and sound better even in their open form. So that's there are some very, very tangible benefits. So if those are the tangible benefits, then why don't we all do it? Well, it's a maintenance thing actually. 0 frets guitars need more maintenance and looking after, because that fret is that 0 fret wears really quickly, and it is your nut point effectively. So it's got to be higher than all your other frets. Okay. All right. Yeah. Because it's got to provide that first pivot point above the first fret and the remaining other frets, right? So it's got to be higher, and it will be a higher fret. So, but what happens is that as we all know, that when you play on frets and do string bends and all of that, it wears down and flattens. They wear out, and that's what happens on 0 fret guitars. Is that 0 fret wears out quite quickly? Well, quite quickly. That's subjective to how much you're playing it and what strings you're using and all of that. So it needs maintenance. And invariably, it needs to get pulled out and a new one put in periodically. So you're going to have that factor of maintenance and fretwork done on that guitar periodically, depending on how often you play it. Whereas arguably, once you've got a nut set correctly and cut properly, that's it. That's it on a normal guitar. You don't need to do any maintenance to the nut then. It's done, other than lubricate it, right?
Because you haven't got this string moving across it all the time as you're bending or fretting things.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Interesting.
But yeah, there you go. There are benefits to a zero fret that players and fans of them really kind of swear by, and I don't doubt those benefits. It kind of makes sense.
It does, doesn't it? In a way, I've often thought that. And when I read that book about the Red Special, and it's fantastic. It's not just like, hey, here's this guitar, and this is what Brian made it. It's like they go into drawings that they'd produced, engineering drawings that his dad did in the design and for the wiring. It's such a great. If you're an engineer like me, you'd just be like, this is awesome. Such a fantastic book. And I'll send you a picture of it so you know what it is. But yeah, it was really fascinating because, the justifications for why they did certain things differently in the design of that guitar are really compelling. Because from an engineering point of view, they're like, well, it should have been done like this. And it should have been done like that, so let's try it like this. And hey, he's still playing that guitar to this day. So
he really is. And
can't argue.
I went and saw a Queen tribute band last week. In fact, the official Queen tribute band.
Oh, excellent!
Put together by Roger. So every member of the band auditions for, I think, Roger and Brian.
Yeah.
And they go out, and it was a global bunch of musicians. Like,
is it Jamie Humphries on guitar? Is it a guy called? Is it him, or is he? He
no,
used to
it's
play
not Jamie
with
Humphries.
Queen. All right, okay.
Yeah, I know Jamie Humphries. No, it's not him.
Okay.
They were great. But just watching and hearing the sound of that Red Special and seeing like what that guitar's all about, watching them play and I think I'm pretty certain, I'm 90% certain that the guitarist, who was incredible, was playing with the old English penny, five penny piece, or
sixpence, isn't it? He used to he always used a sixpence. Yeah. And
I could hear it. I could hear it in the attack on the string. You're like, he's even playing with that as well.
That's cool. Yeah. Hasn't Demo got a Brian May guitar? Yes, he has, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he has.
An enviable collection.
Indeed.
Finally, before we wrap up, by the way, just first of all, amazing work over these last few episodes, mate, helping to present this technical and quite complex information to our listeners, because I think it's really going to help people. It's already helped me. So if it's helped me, it's going to help other people. So thank you for that. And number two, do you know, I sent you a link just before we were talking to my desert island guitar that I never see them. I never see Clapton Strats in pewter with lace sensors for sale anywhere. And then this one's come up on Guitar. But I checked the serial number, and the serial number isn't coming up on Fender's website, which Fender say not every one of them does anyway. But then I was looking at the pictures, and it says the guitar's been upgraded with lace pickups. And I'm like, but they originally had lace pickups. It's not been upgraded unless it's a new one.
Unless it's a new one with the noiseless, because the new ones have got noiseless pickups rather than lace sensors. I'll check it out for you.
Well, the headstock's also got 2 string trees on it, and the Clapton Strat doesn't have 2 string trees. Only there's one. I'm like, this is just such a. Is this? Maybe somebody's kind of got a hold of themselves, because Fender did do a pewter Strat. I think it was the Strat Deluxe or the Strat Ultra in the 80s and 90s. You could get that custom colour. I just wonder if some of the people out there trying to put Clapton Strats together for difficult ones to find and make a bit of money on. But anyway, I'm just being cynical. But
for sure. I'm going to go and check that out now and have a look. That's one of my fun things to do, is fake or real.
Yeah, I know, fake or real.
What is it? Let's see.
It's very good.
We'll tune in next week to figure out what we determine about this guitar.
It's a very good. It's got everything else. It's got the single ply pick guard. It's
TBX boost.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff. The active pickups. It could be what, I don't know. I'm just being cynical.
Could be.
But anyway,
let's have a look. Let's have a look. We'll do some Sherlock Holmes work on that this week and see if we can get you to park some cash with it.
Nice one.
You're very welcome, mate. I hope it's been of use. I hope I've explained things in a way that makes sense. And as always, go to the Guitar Geek Hangout, our little social space on Facebook, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a guitar tech and you've got other ways of doing it or helping people understand how to do this in a way that better explains what I've been trying to say. I'm very open to that feedback. And if you've had a go, like you have, Matt, and you found some positive benefits from doing this, then please let us know, because that means it was useful content, and we'll do some more of that kind of stuff for listeners in the future. Because
awesome.
There's still other stuff you can do on your guitar to make it even better.
Well, that's all we want in this life. Better guitars, please, all day long. Excellent. Anyway, mate,
all right.
Have a cracking week, buddy. I will speak to you on the next one. And take care, mate. Speak soon.
Cheers, mate. Speak soon. Bye.
All the best, mate. Bye. Thanks so much for listening once again. Have a great couple of weeks. If you like what you hear, remember there are 70 odd other episodes going back over 2 years now that you can check out, where we do and talked all kinds of things like budget guitar amps, we rant about Murphy Lab guitars, we visited the London Guitar Show, we talk about our desert island guitar rigs and the 8 steps to setting up and looking after your guitar. Anyway, enjoy them. Best wishes. See you next time on Guitar Smarts Podcast.